For centuries, popular history has told the same story. A grand public university in 9th century Baghdad, the House of Wisdom, where thousands of scholars of every faith gathered in a vast library to translate the world's knowledge and invent modern science. Part of that story is genuinely, remarkably true. Part of it is a myth historians of Islamic science have been trying to correct for years. This video is going to give you both, because getting this right matters more than making it sound impressive. Here's what's solidly documented across multiple independent historical sources. The Abbasid caliphs, starting with al-Mansur in the mid-8th century and accelerating under Harun al-Rashid and especially al-Mamun in the early 9th century, sponsored a massive real translation movement. Greek, Syriac, Persian, and Sanskrit texts on medicine, astronomy, philosophy, and mathematics were systematically translated into Arabic, preserving works that might otherwise have been lost entirely. A real institution called Bayt al-Hikma, the House of Wisdom, existed as part of the Abbasid court, primarily functioning as a royal library and translation office. And real scholars did extraordinary work in this environment. Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi, working in Baghdad in this period, wrote the foundational text that gave algebra its name and its method. The word algorithm comes directly from a Latinization of his name. This part of the story is not exaggerated. It's confirmed by multiple independent primary sources and is not seriously disputed by historians. Here's where the popular version overreaches. The image most people have: a sprawling public university with thousands of scholars of every religion working side by side in one grand building, functioning like a medieval research campus, is not well supported by the primary historical record. Specialist historians of Islamic science, including researchers who've published detailed studies specifically on this question, have pointed out that contemporary 9th century sources mention Bayt al-Hikma only sparsely, and describe something closer to a caliphal library and translation office than a grand public academy. Much of the more elaborate imagery, the vast public institution, the specific size and scale claims, appears to have been layered on much later, especially in 19th and 20th century retellings, romanticizing a real but more modest institution. We're telling you this not to diminish the achievement, but because the real, verifiable story doesn't need the exaggeration to be worth telling. Whatever its exact size and shape, the intellectual culture the Abbasids built in Baghdad came to a brutal, well-documented end. In 1258, the Mongol army under Hulagu Khan besieged and sacked Baghdad. The accounts, corroborated across multiple historical chronicles, describe libraries and collections destroyed, with some traditions holding that the Tigris ran dark with ink from the books thrown into it. The scale of loss is debated in exact detail, but the event itself, the fall of Baghdad and the destruction of its intellectual institutions, is not in dispute. It marks, in most historical framings, the symbolic end of Baghdad's role as the intellectual capital of the Islamic world. So here's the honest version. A real, well-funded, historically significant translation movement under real Abbasid patronage that preserved and advanced human knowledge, housed in an institution likely smaller and less grand than the popular legend, ended by a real and devastating siege 2 centuries later. You didn't need the myth. The true story was already worth telling. This has been AyatAndAsar. Subscribe if you want your history sourced and graded honestly, not just told with confidence.